This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The hostage standoff in Afghanistan now, and relatives and friends of the South Korean hostages being held by the Taliban have been shocked by the killing of a second captive. The body of 29-year-old computer worker Shim Sung-min was dumped outside Ghazni nearly 24 hours ago. His death was followed by a new deadline from the Taliban, who have given the Afghan government until 7:30 GMT on Wednesday to release the prisoners. Melissa Chan reports.
The body of the second South Korean killed, found by the roadside by Afghan police, the victim's face covered in blood. In South Korea, it was the news Shim Sung-min's parents had waited all night not to hear.
Sung-min was a child who was kind and liked to help others, especially those who are poor and physically disabled.
He'd been interviewed by Japan's NHK network on the eve of his death, giving his family hope. But now 2 loved ones are dead and a country is mourning their loss.
We can contain our anger at this merciless killing and strongly condemn this. The South Korean government is strongly urging the kidnappers to stop these acts of barbarity and free our people immediately.
Here at Samuel Presbyterian Church, the families are inside, supporting each other, following the news together, hoping and waiting together. But no matter the outcome of this situation, it is a tragedy already because there has been death. The question now is how far the suffering will go. With very little information about the progress of negotiations, the discussion here has shifted to whether there's a growing momentum for a dangerous rescue operation. Time could be running out, irrespective of deadlines, with many of the hostages in ill health. But it's not just the hostages. Everyone involved has been under tremendous stress.
The family members are very exhausted right now, but we decided to stay strong and not to falter.
With the nightmare looking more and more likely to drag on, the families will need that strength to endure the days and nights ahead. Melissa Chan, Al Jazeera, Seoul.
Reports suggest efforts to secure the release of the remaining 21 hostages are not going well. Meanwhile, Al Jazeera has obtained pictures of some of the South Korean hostages. The footage was passed to Al Jazeera outside of Afghanistan, and it's not known when or how it was shot. Bernard Smith has more.
This footage of the South Korean hostages could be up to 5 days old. Al Jazeera has counted 12 people in the video, 9 women and 3 men. The images were obtained by Al Jazeera from sources outside Afghanistan. Originally, 23 South Koreans were captured, 18 of them women. 2 members of the group have now been killed. Off camera, a voice criticizes the Americans for underestimating the Taliban's capabilities. It's believed that the hostages have since been split into groups around Ghazni province in southern Afghanistan. The government in Kabul is so far refusing to release Taliban prisoners in exchange for the Koreans. That's despite a similar deal that secured the freedom of an Italian journalist in March.
Of course, one thing that we should stress is that we are looking at this from a humanitarian, perspective. We understand the pain that they are going through, and we are doing everything we can to secure the release of the hostages. As far as the comparison with the Italian hostage situation is concerned, I don't think, this should become an industry in Afghanistan. I don't think anyone supports, making hostage-taking an industry. It shouldn't be encouraged. But, we are doing everything. We are looking from all dimensions. We are doing everything we can.
The Afghan army has started building up troop numbers in Ghazni. In the past few days, the Taliban have increased attacks along the main road through the area. In one ambush of a convoy on Monday, 6 police were injured and 3 Taliban killed.
A new Middle East initiative is being launched in the region. It seems that the U.S. wants to flex its muscles and at the same time reassure its Arab friends and allies. Under the slogan, the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice met in Sharm el-Sheikh several of her Arab counterparts in an attempt to rally support for Bush's proposed international peace conference between the Palestinians and the Israelis, as well as to bolster a regional front against Iran. Faiza Alak reports.
The Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh is once again hosting a peace summit, and the guests of honor this time are U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and Defense Secretary Robert Gates. By sending two of his top senior officials to the same region at the same time, Bush wants to stress the importance of this visit. Meanwhile, Rice said that the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting will help bolster the forces of moderation and support a broader strategy to counter the negative influences of Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Syria, and Iran, as well as encourage Washington's Arab allies to help stabilize Iraq. Rice and Gates met with the 6 ministers of the Gulf Cooperation Council, as well as the foreign ministers of Jordan and Egypt. This news comes at a time when Washington is planning to sign arms deals and send military aid in the amount of $43 billion to several Gulf states, Israel, and Egypt. In return, Washington expects its allies to form and bolster a regional front to confront Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Syria, and Iran. It seems that Rice has come back to the region to say that her country will not desert its project, dubbed as the Greater Middle East Project.
Meanwhile, Egypt's Foreign Minister Ahmed Abul Ghayth summed up his talks with the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in 6 points, including a discussion of the Iranian nuclear program and counter-terrorism.
We discussed several regional issues. We issued a joint statement that includes 6 main points. We discussed the Middle East problem as well as the Iranian nuclear program, Iraq, Lebanon, counter-terrorism, the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and the weapons of mass destruction.
Rice vowed to visit the region more frequently as well as to continue talks with Washington's Arab allies in order to prepare for the international peace conference proposed for next fall.
I am looking forward to this meeting, which will pave the way for the International Peace Conference next fall. I told His Excellency the Minister and others that I expect to return frequently to the region in order to prepare for this conference and enhance and accelerate progress on bilateral issues between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
The U.S. weapons deal with countries in the Persian Gulf and the increase in U.S. military aid to the Israeli occupation have generated negative reactions. Muhammad Ali Husseini, a spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, said that the U.S. main objective is to increase tensions in the region. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said that her country will make other military deals to help the Israeli occupation army, Egypt, and other countries in the Middle East counter what she called the negative influence of Al-Qaeda, Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah.
The American arms deals with countries in the Persian Gulf, which allegedly made to counter an illusionary threat, added fuel to the fire in a region that does not need additional problems. Perhaps the objective of these arms deals is to keep the fire ablaze. Meanwhile, the United States continues to provide military aid to Israel, ignoring the fact that Israel has sparked many wars in the region. This is how the recent American arms deals in the Middle East were roughly viewed by both the West and East. Mohammed Ali Husseini, a spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry, commented on the American intention to sell arms to a number of countries in the Persian Gulf, saying that the region needs stability and security, not additional weapons.
The deal was announced as the U.S. Secretary of State and the U.S. Secretary of Defense were visiting the region. The U.S. has a special policy aimed at creating fear among countries in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. is also looking for markets to sell its weapons, which explains why it accuses certain countries of posing threats to their neighbors.
The Iranian Foreign Minister, Mustafa Mohammed al-Najjar, undermined the American weapons deal by saying that all countries have a right to develop their own defenses. He said that Tehran does not feel threatened when the defense capabilities of its neighboring Muslim countries are strengthened. Instead, he focused on the threats posed by the Israeli armaments.
Meanwhile, the Bush administration continues to try and justify the Saudi arms deal to skeptics, with many in the U.S., including congressmen, opposed to the multi-billion-dollar weapons package.
What it does do at this particular moment is send a very clear signal, again, to Iran and to Syria and to those who are seeking to destabilize the region, who are seeking to expand their influence at the expense of forces of moderation in the region, that the United States is committed to the security of our friends and allies, and that we're going to make sure that they have what they need to be able to defend themselves against these threats.
The problem of strengthening everybody around Iran is it assumes that Iran won't have a destabilizing response. There certainly are some people within Iran who would say, see, this is why we need a nuclear deterrent, because the U.S. is arming all of our enemies.
Well, Saudi Arabia, despite the administration's delusions, is not our friend. Saudi Arabia is the leading exporter of terrorist propaganda and education in the world today. 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia. The majority of the foreigners coming into Iraq to fight American troops are Saudis.
Former chairman of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, MK Yuval Steinitz, told Israel Television's Miriam Kirshenbaum today that the warplanes and naval vessels Washington plans on selling to Saudi Arabia should be stationed on the Iranian border and not in the area closest to Israel.
Well, what we really see here is a new arms race in the Middle East between the Iranian-Syrian axis on the one hand and the Egyptian-Saudi axis on the other hand. We have to take into account that one day in the future, both axes might collaborate against Israel in different conditions, and therefore we have to put several demands to our American friends in order to keep our national security. First, to preserve the technological edge, and second, not less important, that those modern airplanes and ships as well that will be provided to Saudi Arabia will be positioned in the east side of the kingdom, near the Persian Gulf, and not in the Red Sea, close to Israel. There should be a clear Saudi commitment and with American supervision that those airplanes and ships and other kind of arms will be deployed only vis-à-vis Iran and not close, not in the vicinity or in the immediate proximity of the Eilat and the Negev.
Arab foreign ministers held an emergency meeting in Cairo to discuss the recent developments in the Palestinian territories and the peace process. At the end of their meeting, the ministers welcomed a proposal calling for an international conference with the participation of all countries involved in the peace process. This news comes after United States President George Bush called for an international Mid-East peace conference. Meanwhile, Syria's envoy to the Arab League expressed reservations over the proposed conference. He said that holding an international conference without first bridging the political gap between Fatah and Hamas will undermine the Palestinian plight.
In a meeting described as exceptional and urgent, Arab foreign ministers discussed the recent developments in the Palestinian territories and the Arab response to the proposed U.S. peace conference. Amidst controversy and disagreement, the Arab ministers talked about recent diplomatic maneuvers and a U.S. proposal calling for an international Mid-East peace conference. From an Arab standpoint, the U.S.-sponsored conference will help bring the Palestinian plight back to the international arena. It comes at a critical stage when the Palestinians are more divided than ever. Consequently, the conference will help transform the Palestinian cause from an internal issue to an international one. Meanwhile, more talks are expected to take place between the U.S. Secretary of State and foreign ministers from Jordan, Egypt, and 6 other Gulf nations. This news will help pave the way for the proposed peace conference, which its date and venue have not been announced. The U.S. has always referred to the peace conference in general terms. Today, the Arab foreign ministers send a clear message.
Our meeting is very important. If you want an international conference, you must meet our demands and conditions. This is a very important point, and it shouldn't be overlooked.
The Arab ministers made it clear that the conference must meet certain criteria before they endorse it. From an Arab standpoint, the conference must be attended by all countries involved in the peace process, and it must discuss the fundamental issues, including the borders and the refugees. Meanwhile, Syria, which has expressed reservations over the position adopted by the Arab League, sent a clear message to the Americans that Damascus shouldn't be excluded from the political equation.
Thousands of female activists from Al-Islamiyya protested in Islamabad, demanding that the Pakistani government rebuild the Hafsa religious school and disclose information about the fate of hundreds of students who are still missing. Meanwhile, dozens of armed individuals raided a mosque in the tribal area of Mahmand and changed its name to the Red Mosque. They warned the Pakistani government from the consequences of getting close to the mosque or using force to get them out. The armed individuals vowed to implement the Islamic Sharia starting from the mosque.
This Red Mosque is different from the one inside Islamabad. It is in the tribal area of Mahmand along the Pakistani borders. The name of this mosque used to be Tarangzai before it was taken over by the armed individuals who changed its name to the Red Mosque. This event may explode at any moment, thus creating more problems to the Pakistani government, which does not need additional burdens. The students who took over the mosque are different from those who took over the Red Mosque in Islamabad, but they have used the same course of action. They said that their objective is to implement the ideas of Abdul Rashid al-Ghazi, who they described as their martyr, and complete his path. The new students have threatened to carry out suicide operations against the army if it does not withdraw from the area. These students are not armed with sticks. Rather, they possess all kinds of weapons and many other things that they may need. The Hafsa religious school is supposed to be administered from the new Red Mosque, where the armed students are exhibiting their force. The new leader of the mosque warned the Pakistani government from the consequences of any military confrontation.
We want to say very clearly, anyone who fights the people regardless of whether they are the US, the Afghan Northern Alliance, or even Pakistan, will receive from us the same response, because they are desecrating Islam.
The Pakistani government tried to act quickly before it was too late by talking to tribal chiefs, hoping that the problem can be resolved through the tribal system known as Al-Jirga. Thousands of female Muslim activists held a demonstration outside the Faisal Mosque in Islamabad to condemn what happened there. They demanded that the government disclose the fate of the missing students and rebuild the Hafsa religious school. They also demanded that the government resign and that an interim government be formed.
We are here to protest the killing of unarmed civilians with chemical weapons and mortar shells. We demand the resignation of the president and all other government officials. An interim government must be formed until free and legitimate elections can be held.
2 months after the Pakistani parliament had gone into recess, the opposition parliament members held the government responsible for what had happened in the first Red Mosque incident. Some people have warned that the Red Mosque incident might be repeated in many mosques in Pakistan under the current circumstances.
The Jordanian Islamic Action Front withdrew from the municipal elections. This move was described by the Jordanian Prime Minister, Maruf al-Bahit, as illegal. Meanwhile, Jordanians headed to the ballot boxes to vote in the municipal elections, which are being held according to a new law that designates 20% of the municipal council seats for women. More than 1.5 million people registered to vote for these elections. Saeed al-Salawi has the details.
Jordanian citizens headed to the ballot boxes to vote for their municipal council presidents and members in 93 municipalities, including members of Greater Amman Council, half of whom are appointed by the government while the other half and the mayor is elected. More than 1,900,000 voters participated in these elections, including members of the military who voted for the first time. There were more than 2,700 candidates, including 361 women, who competed for 929 municipal council seats. 20% of the seats were designated for women.
Our ambition in this national wedding is to have a harmonious and active municipal council that serves the city and the citizenry, first and always.
The citizen will decide on the most suitable person who will maintain his city and his constituency.
For these elections, candidates' campaign slogans were not very political, rather focusing on public services that are important to citizens. There was less heated competition in the capital, but more intense campaigns in other major cities, including Zarqa in the east, Erbil in the north, as well as Karak and Man in the south.
I urge voting for the suitable person for the appropriate position. This policy should be applied by every citizen in order to choose the best person, an educated, cultured, and aware person.
Giving women the opportunity to be candidates in the municipal elections gave women a major motivation to vote.
7 hours after the start of the elections process, the Islamic movement announced that it would withdraw from the municipal elections, accusing the government of fraud.
It's clear that there are fraudulent activities going on with great regret. This was intended and premeditated. Once again, it was meant to undermine the Islamists.
The entire election process is being monitored by all sides. Thus, there is absolutely no cause for doubt. If someone loses, it does not mean that everything went wrong.
The most notable aspect of these municipal elections was the withdrawal of the Islamic movement from them. The movement accused the government of fraud. The government responded by saying that the lack of acceptance of the movement's candidates was the real reason why it withdrew, in a country where clans rather than political party affiliations dominate. Saad al-Salawi, Al-Arabiya, Amman.
Saad al-Salawi, Al-Arabiya, Amman.
Since the development of the Iraqi security forces, most areas and neighborhoods in Al-Anbar province have witnessed major stability. Life has completely returned to normal for all the official institutions and services there.
The leader of the security forces in the province confirmed that cooperation between citizens and these forces contributed to maintaining security and stability in Al-Anbar.
Al-Anbar residents are cooperating with the security forces by providing information about any suspicious activity or emergencies in their areas. This has helped to maintain security and stability in areas and neighborhoods in Al-Anbar province.
This area has been purged. Only small pockets of them have remained. We think that they have some hideouts in this area. God willing, our duties will continue and will completely clear this area.
The Al-Anbar 2nd Military Division used its high capabilities to clear the Bubali and Gordon areas. They are the most dangerous areas in the province, used by terrorists as their main holdouts.
An intelligence agent provided information that several terrorists were infiltrating into the northern Gorton area, and an appropriate force was quickly formed to purge this area. An appropriate plan was implemented with the backup of 2 brigades. For a year or more, this area has been known as a center gathering place for terrorists. It was their last holdout.
The lack of weapons and military equipment did not lessen the soldiers' determination to implement their military commanders' orders to carry out the mission of maintaining security and stability in the entire province.
Despite the major duties carried out by the division suffers from a huge lack of equipment and support. This equipment does not come from Al-Anbar police or any other place. Even the fatigues. These are the personal equipment of the soldiers. Everyone paid for it from his own personal salary. So from here, we appeal to the Al-Anbar province administrator and the Interior Ministry to provide support for this division, which purged many areas of Al-Anbar.
The Al-Anbar security forces work hand in hand with the government for the victory of Iraq and the security of its people. These are the sons of Al-Anbar who demonstrate deep pride and heroism despite all the challenges, and who say no to anyone who wants to harm Iraq. From Al-Anbar province, Ahmed Dulaimi, Iraqiya.
The Cold War between the rival candidates to the northern Metin by-elections is promising a fierce battle ahead. Here are the details.
Former President Amine Gemayel stressed yesterday on the need to wage the Metin electoral battle as a message of loyalty to martyr Pierre Gemayel and proof of the Phalange's strong presence in the area. He said, however, that the battle needs to be fought in a civilized manner to avoid clashes among Metnis. In reference to MP Michel Aoun, Gemayel reiterated that it was the other party that closed the door to mediation, which tried to spare the Metin an electoral battle. Also yesterday, Gemayel delegated his wife Joyce to visit Maronite Patriarch Cardinal Nasrallah Sfair in the Diman to thank him for his support for Gemayel's candidacy to the by-elections. Joyce Gemayel said the reason why she refused Aoun's condolences for her son's death was because, in her words, Aoun was indirectly responsible for her son's slaying because he supports those who killed March 14 leaders.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.